Hello, I'm Martin Mercer.
And I'm James Mastriani.
You've never heard of us.
We're two Brits who grew up in North London and have had varying success in the film and television industry.
In our ever-advancing age, we find ourselves on
the wrong side of Hollywood.
In our series of podcasts, we'll share our experiences of what it's like being a British bloke living and working,
or not,
in the biz.
We'll discuss everything from fish and chips to things that wind us up.
So stay with us. It's all uphill from here.
This podcast may contain strong language. If you're of a sensitive nature or easily offended, we invite you to, as they say in Blighty, jog on.
Bum 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 bum
Morning.
Morning!
Morning.
It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? Because when I hear 50th anniversary, it's sort of like death hovering behind me because, my God, I can remember clearly seeing the film for the first time and you're saying 50 years ago. Oh, worrying.
Yeah. It was released here in the US on June 20th, 1975.
Right. And we didn't see it in the UK until December the 26th, 1975, because back then we'd always get their movies later.
Yeah.
So we had to wait, champing at the bit to see that.
Yeah, so they had to make all these prints for the cinema release for UK and Europe. So that's probably why it took so long compared to today where they just upload it to a cloud.
Yeah.
Don't have to make any prints, you know?
No. It stayed with us so long, this movie.
Yeah.
Can you remember where you first saw it?
I do. I was 7 years old and Celia, my sister, used to run the cinema at Southgate. She was the manager there.
Yeah.
And I had pleaded with her to let me see the film and she finally relented and we sat at the back of the movie theatre, but exactly at the point where Hooper goes down to look at Ben Gardner's boat.
Spoilers.
She came in and she said, "Come on, I think you need to go to the toilet." And she dragged me out of the theatre. And just as we were exiting, I can hear the audience go, "Ah!" And they're all screaming and stuff. And I'm like, "What was that?" She goes, "Doesn't matter."
Right.
Wasn't till probably about a year or two later that I finally saw the movie on TV. And I was like, "Oh, so that's what that was." It wasn't scary at all. But it really was.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. But it's interesting you talk about that sequence because I think there was two sequences shot in Los Angeles and that was in the swimming pool in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, Verna Field swimming pool.
Right.
The editor.
Yeah, the rubber head. And then I think another sequence when they had the mechanical shark on stage in a tank at Universal.
Was that on a tank?
Yes.
I thought that was Australia.
No. Australia was the live action where they shot two tiger sharks.
Yeah.
They had a small stuntman in the suit, kind of like Alien. They had smaller people to give scale.
Yeah.
And the only footage of that in the movie is when the shark actually got caught up in the cage and it's thrashing.
Thrashing around, yeah.
But if you look at the making of, there is a whole sequence with the mechanical shark and you see Richard Dreyfuss and Jaws right there. And that was at Universal.
Oh.
Yeah. I was surprised because it's very effective because they'd had time to repair the shark.
Yeah.
Bruce, which Spielberg named after his lawyer.
That's right.
Who represented the likes of George Clooney, Robert Zemeckis and Clint Eastwood. Very cool.
Yeah. What about you? What was your first remembrances of it?
I was actually on a cruise, as one does in the 70s, yes. It was the Canberra and it was crossing the Bay of Biscay, which is quite a stormy crossing as you go round Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And it had a huge cinema there and it wasn't filled and I went in there and saw Jaws and I remember the boy lying on his air mattress being attacked and seeing the blood bubbling.
Oh.
I remember distinctly the woman's hand in the box and mesmerised by that. And then, of course, as Roy Scheider is feeding the chum and you're just focused on that, suddenly this big fucking shark comes up behind him, which is just awesome.
Yeah. He says, "You chum this shit."
Yeah.
That's when he has that amazing reaction.
Oh, yes.
And he goes, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
Which was a joke on set because it was very crowded and so on and so forth.
Well, there's an interesting thing in the play where they talk about the origins of that line and whether Roy Scheider came up with it himself or whether Steven Spielberg came up with it.
Ah, right.
No spoilers here, though.
No. I mean, it is interesting because horror films are on the resurgence again.
Yeah.
And when you think back to that, and it wasn't really sold as a horror film, but I think it is a horror film. I think, especially with the Spielbergian Hitchcock push in and zoom back shot that you got on Roy Scheider as he's looking, is like, whoa. And that to me is the descent into this man's terror.
Yeah.
His fears and the use of colour, the reds.
Yeah.
It's just beautifully made.
I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
you were on the Canberra watching this film. I believe there's a picture of you wearing a certain T-shirt.
Yeah, I have a picture of me on the ship but it says gums and say Jaws. Yeah, might pop that up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the play because it is in Martha's Vineyard, which is where the film is set there because it's meant to be Amity Island.
Yeah.
And before he got the commissioner's job, my mate Steve Feinberg is a film commissioner of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But when he was a kid, they were coming out of the cinema and they were interviewing all the people coming out and they asked this little kid, what did you think of it? And he goes, yeah, it's okay.
Oh.
And that's Stephen.
We'll have to find that footage.
I think it's up on YouTube and he ends up being the film commissioner of Rhode Island. But anyway, we're 50 years from the movie. You mentioned the play, Martha's Vineyard, and we're mentioning that because...
We're going to get him on later.
Who?
My brother, what is the director of The Shark is Broken and other things. But before we do that, it's time for our...
Dong, 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 dong club.
So because we're dealing with jaws and jawing and eating, not human flesh, did you know that Spielberg had so many nightmares whilst making Jaws that he stuck a bunch of celery under his pillow?
Why is that?
Well, apparently celery, it gives off an aroma that sort of relaxes you.
Really?
Yeah.
I never thought of celery as having that kind of aroma.
No, well, it depends where you get it from. If you buy it from Whole Foods. But, you know, if garlic keeps vampires away, apparently celery keeps shark nightmares away.
Okay, well, there you go. Now we know.
But coming back to our food, this week we visited La Rochelle Bakery, which is in North Hollywood.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, lovely. And what's the interesting side note about La Rochelle?
Well, the side note is it's owned by an Armenian couple who used to live in Paris. And they plied their bakery trade there and decided that enough of this Ralph's shite, excuse for croissants, moulded bollocks that they have here. It is time to introduce the American palate to proper pucker pastries.
There you go. That should be on a T-shirt.
Yeah, proper pucker pastries. I should license that.
You should.
And I had to fucking pay for these. Should be free. Anyway. So we've got a pan au raisin.
Okay.
We've got a pan au raisin.
Which translates to raisin bread.
That's right.
Yep.
In round.
Yep.
And then we've got a fruit tart.
Oh.
And if you look, what's so beautiful about these is that French flaky pastry. And it's not too sweet.
Yeah.
So, look, you are the virgin here.
I am.
You've not had these before. Would you dunk yours first?
All right.
Go on, let's hear it.
So I'm starting with the raisin bread.
Yeah.
Or the pan de raisin.
Oui, oui.
I'm not going to dunk it yet. I'm going to just taste it. So.
Okay. Now, don't choke yourself. Don't get it caught on that soft palate.
That's really nice. Very flaky.
It's the flaky, right?
Yeah.
Not too sweet, is it?
It's not too sweet. It's just a perfect amount of sweetness in that. I'm going to dunk it just to see if it expands the flavours a little bit. Oh, that's really lovely.
It's lovely, isn't it?
I'm going there for lunch.
Oh, I would. Now, what you've got the flaky pastry, which is slightly crispy and crunchy. You bite through that into the soft, slightly eggy pastry, and then you get a massive hit of raisin. And the sweetness explodes over your tongue, going down into your gutty wutties.
See, I don't get any eggy because the eggy thing that you're talking about would technically put me off. Eggs is fine, but...
No, you misunderstand me, my dear friend.
Clarify, please do.
It's not so eggy. It's not like durian. No. You can see that the pastry has a different texture. Maybe I'm incorrect saying eggy. I would say it's soft. Oh, I know what it is. Look, the raisins have imbued themselves into the surrounding pastry, which is very aerated. When you get American pastries, sorry, dear friends, but when you get American pastries, the texture is like cement. Or it's very dense and sweet.
I think that depends on where you get it from. To be fair, we've had some good American pastries depending on where you go. But I think if you're referring to Ralph's or the chain supermarkets, I think they just churn these things out. I was listening to a show on NPR a while back and they were talking to a pastry chef and she said that it took her 10 years to learn how to make a French pastry exactly like they do in France.
Right.
And I'll have to find out where that is because we should go there.
Well, now we're looking for a new career.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have Le French Spotted Dick. It's a bit of English in there. So yeah. So what's happened is the sweetness doesn't come from the sugar, it comes from the currants expanding into the pastry.
Yeah.
The pastry inside has more of an aerated texture, and then you dunk it, and of course the coffee soaks up in between these aeration of the pastry. So it's just such a essential experience. Not insexual, of course. I know what you're thinking. You're dirty. Very dirty you are.
I actually have a confession to make. While you were talking about all of that, I had actually finished that raisin bread.
Wow.
So I'm ready to move on to this fruit tart.
How dare you? Go on.
Oh, and there's... hang on.
Don't drop your berries.
No, my berries have not dropped. All right, so of course one of the berries has dropped, but I'll take that. So this, nice, crusty, flaky outside, and a soft, chewy inside, with a slightly sweet but not overdone flavour to it.
No.
I haven't had any fruit yet, but that was just the pastry part. Very nice.
I think when we cut this in half, because we're on a budget, and your half had more fruit than mine, I had one berry.
Yeah.
But I noticed here the pastry is almost folded.
Layered.
And I think that's how you do French pastry, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll have to go on to the Great British Bake Off again and check in with Mr. Hollywood. But you can see there's this layering. And in the cooking, there you go, look at that. And that separates, but not too much. And that's what gives you that light texture as you bite through, but very lovely.
Yeah.
Well, that was nice, isn't it? So La Rochelle Bakery on Vineland.
Okay.
And you can tell because the shop has got this fantastic bit of graffiti on the outside. No, there's tagging, which is arseholes spraying their shit everywhere. And there's graffiti, which is actually an art form. And there's some incredible writing that you can see. And it's on La Rochelle's beautiful artwork that they obviously got some graffiti artists to do, and it's really beautiful. So it's a great place, very friendly in there. Do pay them a visit.
Absolutely.
And we say this without any compensation. Thank you.
We'll have to remedy that.
Yeah. I chose La Rochelle pastries today because Martha's Vineyard, which is an island in the US state of Massachusetts, where they had the witch trials, and it's just south of Cape Cod, and it's known for being popular, posh, and a summer colony where the rich go to.
Yes.
And they're also known for their produce and their baked goods, as it happens. So I thought, well, okay, let's do some baked goods because Martha's Vineyard, and these are quite posh.
Right.
I'm not sure why it's called Martha's, but anyway, it's a very nice area, which I've never been to. What is the theatre?
You see, I should know this. We can ask him. But what I do know, it is actually a school theatre. And they can't do it on the 20th. So they're actually opening on July 5th.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure. Edgartown, somewhere around there, which is where they shot it.
Right.
There's a Jaws museum there. They've got a lot of stuff going on. Guy can tell us all about that.
Yeah.
But do you know what inspired Peter Benchley to write about a shark?
No. From what memory I have of it, it was some event that actually happened, right?
Yeah, it was a New York fisherman named Frank Mundus who caught a 4,500-pound shark off the coast of Montauk in 1964. And I think Peter Benchley was curious about this guy's exploits. But he had other titles for the book before settling on Jaws. Do you want to know what they were?
Carry on.
The Stillness in the Water.
God.
Yeah.
Next.
The Silence of the Deep.
Oh, God.
Which is interesting because there was a movie based on a book called The Deep.
There was all this shit that came out. There was even a thing called Barracuda.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That my dad brought on 16mm film, and he got these reels of Barracuda. It was boring as shit, mate.
Yes, I know.
What were the other titles?
The other title was Leviathan Rising.
Okay, there was the movie Leviathan.
Yep, okay. And then the last one, which I think they just shortened down, was The Jaws of Death.
Well, imagine if instead of the Jaws of Death, he'd just gone, oh, what about death? That's a good one.
The Swimming Death.
Yeah, death.
Yeah.
I like that. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that's fascinating. Isn't Montauk off of California somewhere? It's not on the East Coast, is it?
No, it's off New York.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And of course, Peter Benchley appears in the movie, doesn't he?
He does. He's the reporter on the beach.
That's right.
Yeah.
The bloke in glasses.
Yeah, with the helicopter flying behind him overhead.
And his pockets filled with fucking cash.
Yeah.
Nice one, Peter.
Yeah. So, shall we get my brother on board?
Just to step backwards briefly, we did interview him when he was doing the one in London, so be fascinated to catch up with my dear friend Guy Masterson.
Yeah, he'll tell us all about this next version of the play.
Yeah, let's wheel him in.
And he'll tell us the head, the tail, and the whole damn thing. So we have with us my brother
And my friend.
Guy Masterson.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Busy man.
So I'm going to just cut straight to the chase here. You were 14 years old when you saw Jaws.
Yes.
Do you remember where you were, what you thought, and how it affected you?
Yeah, Mum took me to Leicester Square to see it
Oh, wow.
because it was in the cinemas. I can't remember when it was. I seem to remember it was a cold day.
Yeah, December.
Now, Mum took me to two films in my whole time at Cross Hospital. One was Superman in the West End,
Right.
and the other was Jaws.
Nice.
And I insisted that we went to see Jaws because I knew the following year we were going to go out to America and that Universal were building their ride.
Right.
And I wanted to go on it. So I was only, 15 when we went to LA. But I saw it in the cinema and I was one of the first people at the school to see it.
Wow.
And everybody wanted to know what it was. Same thing with Star Wars
Yeah.
a couple of years later, because if you remember, James, I saw that in San Francisco.
Not San Francisco. You saw it in Man's Chinese.
No, I saw it in San Francisco first.
Really?
And then Uncle Rebello bought tickets for me for my 16th birthday.
Yeah, so Mum took you to the US in 1977 for your 16th birthday.
Yeah.
And you were witness to the Star Wars blockbuster.
Yes.
But Star Wars opened May 25th. But you were there in August. But you got to see them putting R2 and 3PO and Darth Vader's footprints.
I was there the night they put the footprints in Gromos Chinese.
Yeah.
Nice.
But you also went to Universal Studios.
I went to Universal Studios to go on the Jaws ride.
Right. What did you think of that?
Yeah. Well, you're in that train, and all I remember was it lurching and going, and then this big plastic shark went, and water splashed everywhere.
Right.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you had to line up for about an hour and a half to do that.
Yeah.
It's always been disappointing.
It was August in LA, which is just mad heat,
Yeah.
you know.
But maybe you had something to do with it. I don't know. Mum brought me back a rubber jaws shark.
Did she?
Yes.
Oh,
You bastard.
And I wish I still had it. Yeah, I used to play with that in the bathtub.
I bet you did.
but you've still got my Gromons Chinese premiere program for Star Wars.
Do you?
Somewhere. You have
No,
it.
you.
You stole it.
No, I have it. That's right. I did steal it. Yes, it's in my collection over here.
That must be worth something, James.
Well, I'm maybe.
Shall we find out?
Yes.
Yes, let's find out.
Sell it, my dear boy.
But did you ever imagine, after seeing Jaws and seeing the attraction, that you would ever have anything to do with a Jaws show of any sort years later?
No, I mean, you don't think that, do you? I mean, the Star Wars thing was always special anyway, because I'd been there at the Gromos Chinese and that was pretty special. But no, you don't think that you're going to have anything to do with anything like that. And Jaws was extraordinary the way it came about with Ian and my friendship from 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
That was in Edinburgh.
Well, I'd known him because he was Beth's boyfriend at the time.
Gotcha.
And I got to know him during their relationship. And then they broke up. And I'd seen him perform on stage a couple of times, and he was a very, very good actor. There was one time in 2006 I needed him, and I called Beth. I said, Beth, if you got Ian's number, I need him to bail me out. And I called him and I said, I've got a job for you in Wales. It's a tour of Wales. And he was out of work at the time. And we became friends over that period. And we talked a lot about being the son of Robert Shaw and my being the nephew of Richard Burton and the influences and all of that. But then at that moment, 2006, I never had an inkling that I would be involved in anything Jaws related. And, you know, when Ian made the decision to have a go at this, I was one of the first people who called and said, what do you think of this idea? And I said, I think it's a terrific idea, and who's going to play your dad and all that. And he sent me the script, and it seemed like one of those very fortuitous ideas. But I had no idea about the level of popularity that this film has and the sort of underworld fan base.
Right.
In fact, I didn't even realize it until I got to Edinburgh. And people were coming in their T-shirts and showing us their shark tattoos. And it's like a whole world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And now you're going to the epicenter of it, Martha's Vineyard.
We are heading to the epicenter, yeah.
And your staging has changed since your Broadway and your London.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that, especially as your lead is not in this one?
Well, firstly, the script that we did on Broadway has become the definitive version of the script that everybody licenses now. I was lucky enough to work on that script with the boys in the rehearsal room and kind of refine it and make it what it is. So I know the ins and outs of that. So reproducing that play, for me, is as long as I've got the right actors, which I do, is a relatively straightforward thing. So how does this differ? It differs because, first thing, I asked Duncan to create a modular set so that we could put the show into large theatres or small theatres. So if you remember, when we did Edinburgh, we did it on a small set. It was a 250-seat theatre, which isn't that small, but it had a small playing area.
Yeah.
And we only played with the centre, the core of the orca.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cabin with the seats.
Yeah, that's right, just the centre bit.
Yeah.
So the play can be very small.
Yeah.
So then when we moved into the West End and the budget was not an issue, they basically said, what's your dream idea for this, Duncan, Guy, Nina? Duncan had this great idea of having the front of the boat off completely and a big sort of shark bite out of the back.
Yeah.
You know where the shark goes up and takes Robert Shaw?
Yeah.
That whole back section has been bitten off, effectively.
Right.
And the whole front side of the boat is gone. So Duncan created for me on this latest production much more of a skeletal version of the orca. So you can actually see much more in it. On Broadway, you had a whole front part of the hull. We don't have any of that. We have the back hull and we have a bit of the front, and it's basically a cross section of the whole boat. So you can see much more which is in it.
Oh, interesting. You had to get the props and all that?
We have to get the props. We have to make sure that they're all movie related.
Yeah.
We like to use the phrase smorgasbord for Jaws fans.
Lots of Easter eggs.
I'd never heard of that phrase until this year, ironically. But yeah, it's full of Easter eggs.
Oh, that's great.
Like buckets of chum and receipts and fishing rods and all kinds of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Jaws fans absolutely love it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the thing is, guys, what I loved about the show, when I was lucky enough to see the one in Drury Lane, is you create a character with the orca as well as the stars, and also a character of the sea, the ocean, the foreboding, the storm, and so on and so forth.
Oh, that was Nina's genius.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sound as well. And when you do this sort of modular production, how do you convey that? Or is that lost? Or how do you approach that?
Well, for the first time, when we did North Shore, we were performing on a circular theatre, which is in the round.
Yeah.
And we knew that we weren't going to be able to project on anything. There was nothing there. So we put some screens behind to block off the back of the theatre, and we only opened up 400 seats. So we hired a lighting designer, Jeff Greenberg, to come in and give us the flavour of what Nina had created with the backdrops.
Yeah.
What time of day, cloud cover. And he really was able to give, just through use of colour, a sense of what time of day it was and what the weather was like. But when we get Nina's video back for Martha's Vineyard, we're able to convey a lot more. Now, the big issue that we had, and one of the reasons why the Broadway production didn't immediately tour, was when we did Broadway in the West End, we had a full semicircular backdrop and projections on the flat stage, which gave the boat an impression of floating.
Totally. Excellent it was.
And then you had this horizon which rose and fell with the sound.
Yeah.
And particularly when the launch would come in and you'd hear the put, 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 put of the launch, and then you'd hear the boom of the launch as it hit the side of the boat.
Yeah.
And then the boat would tip forward and back, and absolutely brilliant what she did.
Yeah.
So it gave the sense that the boat was constantly moving, but the boat was static.
Yeah.
Completely static.
Yeah.
And we were worried about that at first.
Yeah.
So we had to build it up because we were worried about people in the audience getting seasick.
Ah.
Literally. I said, it makes no sense that we see the horizon moving. The actors need to move forward
Oh, yeah.
when the boat strikes as well. And so that all had to be choreographed.
Star Trek.
Well, exactly. We brought in a brilliant choreographer to make sure that the movement on the boat was as accurate as it could be. And the boys spent an afternoon on a boat in New York Harbor.
Right.
Just feeling what it's like when a boat is pitching and tossing and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there was another thing, because each time the launch hits, it's itself a product of the weather or the speed at which the launch is coming in. So if you have a very strong one and the boat strikes loudly, the boys are really shaken off balance.
Right.
And that had a good dramatic effect as well.
Nice.
So when I came to redirect this without the video, we didn't have the obvious visual of the horizon rising and falling behind. But then we realised we didn't actually need it because the boys acting the bumps worked just as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And the constant feeling of being not quite in balance. There was a constant moving. The knees were always bent. They just gave a real life to it. So you never, ever thought that the boat was static.
Wow.
But the video really helps all that. Did I tell you the story of the boat creak in the Orca?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Did you? Oh.
Yeah, you did.
I did tell you that one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, go on. Tell us it again, because I can't remember it.
So Adam Cork couldn't find a boat creak.
Yeah.
You know, there's a constant creaking of the Orca during the Indianapolis scene. And I was sitting with Nookie having coffee, and I had my bare foot on the coffee table, and I moved it, and it went, and I moved it again, and I went, oh my God. And this is what I recorded.
Yeah.
At the end of it, Brigitte goes, okay, enough. So I gave them to Adam, and he incorporated them into the soundscape.
Yeah.
And they sound brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And I could hear them from the back of the gods and everything like that. And there's my boat creak. It was just my bare foot on a coffee table. Anyway, so we're coming to rehearse it again for Canada. And I've got an unbalanced sound system in the rehearsal room. I'm hearing the boat creak, and it's going... Da, 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 and every so often, we'd hear... got, okay, got. And it would happen at really inopportune times, and I couldn't identify what that was. And eventually I said, okay, I've got to find out what it is. So we tried to unravel Adam's soundscape, which is so multi-layered that I couldn't find it.
Oh, God.
And eventually I just made a note on the time code where it was. And I then investigated. I went down about 4 or 5 layers, and there was this errant boat creak on a loop. But Adam hadn't nipped off Brigitte going, okay, enough. So there's 2.5 minutes of boat creak. At the end of every single one is
that enough?
It was the weirdest
You
thing.
haven't told us this.
And of course, the actors had to live through this on the West End stage.
No!
Because they could hear it, because it was coming out underneath the boat. We couldn't hear it out front. We could only hear the boat creak. And Ian said, yeah, what is that? I thought it was some kind of a Martha's Vineyard turn that Adam had found and put into the soundscape.
Okay, enough.
And it wasn't. It was okay, enough. Bloody hilarious.
Oh, my God.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great story. You haven't told that to the other podcast, have you, Guy?
I think I have mentioned it, but I haven't given them the recording.
Right.
Now, going back to the reason it didn't tour was because the cost of bringing out the British team that created it was prohibitive. And the cost of putting on a show with 5 high-end projectors, which is what it had on Broadway, and the time it took to focus those projectors and everything that was required for the show, it took 4 or 5 days of tech in every theatre it was going into.
Yeah.
It became prohibitive.
Right.
And so another one of my big questions was to Nina, and I remember when she invented it, we were in a pub in New York and going, what are we going to do? How are we going to tour this? We've got to be able to tour it. Wouldn't it be a shame if we couldn't? And Nina goes, well, I've got an idea. I think we must have been about 4 pints down at that point. She's so wonderful. And she said, I was thinking, what if we have the film strip idea, which was on the posters anyway,
Right.
and we present that as a film strip behind the boat.
Okay.
We get rid of the idea that you project onto the stage itself. So you actually only need 3 projectors, not 5. And the only thing you need to do is to focus it on a static film screen from behind.
Right.
So once you've focused it, which you can do in a couple of hours,
Yeah.
you're done.
Right.
So all she had to do was resize her work to be projected from behind into 3 film screens, which were shaped like
Like a film frame.
a film frame.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what she did.
Yeah.
And that was a genius decision because it meant that for a fraction of the price we did it on Broadway, we could now recreate a show which could tour.
Right.
And you can put the screens up, you can put the boat up, all within a day.
Excellent.
Now, if push comes to shove, you can get the actors on for the evening show.
Wow. Okay.
And so you can come down on a Saturday night and you box it up at the Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then you travel to the next venue. You unload in the evening on the Sunday. It gets put in overnight. You tech the show during the day and you're on the stage on the Monday.
Been great.
Just like a proper touring show.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds quite intense.
It's very, very intense.
Yeah.
But it means you can sell Monday through Saturday or you can sell Tuesday through Sunday.
Excellent.
What's it like not having Ian reprise his role?
Well, it's brilliant, actually, because Ian has always been there. Ian has always been key. He wrote it for himself to play his father. Therefore, he knew all the cadences. He knew exactly how a joke was supposed to sound. He refined his part for him perfectly. So how would another actor do that? Well, just like any new actor coming to any role. I mean, how many King Lears are there? How many Hamlets are there?
Right.
So a good actor is always going to be able to make it their own. And they bring things to it that Ian can't bring.
Right.
Because they're different people.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, if there's anything in Ian's performance that I would miss, I then have the benefit of having directed Ian. I can direct one of those moments
Right.
so that we get the benefit of some of the really good stuff that Ian brought, but we also get the benefit of the new actor's work, which is fantastic.
Right.
So Tim Hull is the guy that's playing Shaw for us. And I said to him, all the blocking is done. We're not going to reinvestigate the blocking. We don't have the luxury of time for this show. So come in, have that blocking in your head, and then learn the lines and make it your own. And that's pretty much how I went with all three of the actors.
Right.
We're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
I'm going to give you the basics of what I know works. Then you, as brilliant professional actors, are going to make it your own. And it's exactly what they did. And they did it absolutely brilliantly.
Excellent. Was it nerve-wracking seeing somebody else play Robert Shaw that wasn't Ian first time around?
Well, I'd seen it before, of course, in the West End
Yeah.
with Will Wallace, and he was fantastic.
That was during COVID, right?
It was during COVID. And I'd seen him do the understudy run too. And it proved to us that it could be done, that the show wasn't Ian dependent, which is exactly what Ian wanted.
Right.
He's so thrilled that the show is being done by other people.
Good.
And of course, he benefits from it financially
Yeah.
because the show's getting done, it's being licensed, and he gets paid.
Hey, Guy, obviously I was doing a tiny bit of research and a quote from the New York Times on the Broadway play, and it talks about, "Its sharks are human though, they're called sons." And that really struck me because at first I was so taken by the love of Jaws and your presentation, but that really pulled me up, and I thought it fascinating, stripping it to its bones, the relationship between father and son. And did that inform you as a director of getting that through the whole dressing of Jaws and the shark and all that stuff?
It was Ian and Joseph's core of the play. The piece couldn't just be about Jaws or a celebration of Jaws or a series of anecdotes about Jaws. It needed to be much, much more than that. And it was always going to be because Ian was playing his dad. So the play in its first iteration was very much a love letter to his father.
Yeah.
And it was kind of Jaws through Robert Shaw's eyes.
Point of view. Yeah.
And we realised when we took it to West End, firstly, the version we did in Edinburgh was 70 minutes long and the show needed to be 90 minutes minimum. We had another scene which we could add, which was about 11 minutes long, but that took it up to 81.
Right.
And so how were we going to make it a bigger show? Well, there was naturally going to be more elucidation of the scenes and we were going to flesh it out more. And I added these three things, which we called interludes, which was a way of breaking the original sequence of scenes up so that we as an audience could have a rest from the constant battling of egos in a very small space.
Right, yeah.
And then we realized that as the play developed, that we could use those interludes as narratives. For example, in the first interlude, Robert Shaw asks if he can have a go at rewriting. So the first interlude becomes about Robert in the cabin rewriting the Indianapolis speech.
Yeah.
And the two other boys, one is sunning themselves and one is smoking on the deck. And then the middle interlude, which I actually think really made the play, was one of our extensions of what we call the drunken indie scene, when Robert Shaw asks for permission to drink prior to recording the scene.
Yes.
And by this time, Robert Shaw is drinking a lot, and he drinks one too many and goes off on one and turns on Dreyfus. He can't hear a line. He says, "What do you say? What's the line?" And Dreyfus repeats the line. He says, "What? You shut the hell up. What, you think you're playing Quint now?" And he says, "Look at your furry little face." "I know a part you can play in Shakespeare, boy. The fool! You can play fool. I'll play Lear to your fool. How about that?" And so this idea of King Lear entered the play.
Oh, yes, yes.
And so the end of that scene, he falls down and he goes out on deck for this next interlude. And I asked Nina, can you turn this squall in the distance into a storm, a real storm, which surrounds the boat? And I said to Adam Cork, can you turn that squall in the distance into a storm that surrounds the boat with lightning and explosions all around? And then we could turn that scene into a metaphor for King Lear raging against the storm.
And it's powerful.
But it's also about a man who's losing control. A man who, whatever is getting to him, and what is getting to Robert Shaw is the extended shoot on the boat, and Dreyfus is driving him crazy, and he's drinking more, and he's going to end up not earning any money because of the delays, and he's going to have to pay taxes, and all this stuff is absolutely making him nuts. And this is the big climax of that. The audience then has to worry, crikey, what if the Indianapolis speech doesn't get recorded?
Yeah.
Because in real life, Spielberg threatened to cut the scene because they had to bring all these cameras onto the boat. So it was a big hoo-ha and it had to be a calm day and a calm evening. And it failed. So he was just going to cut it. And Robert called Stephen in the middle of the night and said, don't cut it. Let me have one more go. I promise I'll get it right. And he did.
Yeah.
He had another go. And what we see, of course, is actually a tied together recording of the speech. The first part of it was recorded first day and the second part was recorded the second day.
Interesting.
There are some telltale signs, but he gets it so right that it becomes the iconic Indianapolis scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So what we actually ended up doing in that scene was creating the perfect climax, because the arc of the play is, can we possibly imagine Jaws without the Indianapolis speech?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
No.
Yeah.
What would the film be? It would be a horror movie
Yeah.
about a shark.
Yes, absolutely.
But in the event, what we've got is a movie with something much, much deeper and more powerful going on. Also, the way that Dreyfuss reacts and Scheider reacts in that scene, it really makes it so powerful. And it basically elevates the piece.
And it gives him the reason for why he is the way he is.
Yeah. A maniac. And then you've got the parallels with Moby Dick and Bicycle Thieves and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it really became a powerful thing. And then also because Ian had the foresight to include in there one scene where Robert Shaw gets to talk about his father and then reveals that, of course, he killed himself when he was 12. And then that opens up the can of worms for the two other boys who both have issues with their father.
There's some corporal punishment as well, which informed that generation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all three of the guys have father issues. And of course, it reminds us that these aren't just three actors that we know and love and made that movie.
Right.
These are three ordinary human beings who happen to become actors, who've all got big issues with their papas.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that we are human too.
Yeah.
And we empathize with those characters.
Yeah.
And what's brilliant about that is you're going to see a play about Jaws,
Yeah.
but actually you get a play about fathers and sons. And you've got all these hard-nosed Jaws fans going, we're going to see a play about Jaws. And actually they're sitting there going, I love that.
You actually saw those reactions.
Oh, God, yeah. But you can feel it. You know when a piece is working because you can feel it in the audience and you just know in that moment that there's such silence.
Yeah.
And when Dreyfuss, in his scene, he has a breakdown. And we all know that Dreyfuss has since been diagnosed as bipolar. Of course, he was undiagnosed at that time. And he wasn't helping himself because he liked to party and liked a little bit of
Devil's dandruff.
party drugs and things like that. And of course, when you're caught on a tiny boat for so long with two very different human beings as your shipmates, you're going to grate each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is interesting about it because with the filming techniques back then, they really were stuck inside that boat. Now I think we'd be on a volume stage and there would be air to breathe. But of course, that's what gives it the film, you know.
Right.
And that's what you capture in the play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, they were filming on incredibly warm days at that point.
Right.
When they eventually filmed the Indianapolis speech.
Yeah.
And you can just see the sweat beads forming before the shark hits.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting thing that I saw the other day. I think it was after your recent podcast. I went and looked, and the scene where Robert Shaw sings Farewell and Adieu.
Farewell and adieu, dear fair Spanish ladies.
So what's interesting about that is he actually sung that song in the film The Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And he sings it all the way through. That was an ad-lib in Jaws, and Spielberg kept it.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
But that's the brilliance of Spielberg, and it's also the brilliance of working with three incredible actors who can do that,
Right.
who got to know each other and trusted each other on that overly long shoot. But here's what I was trying to say before I didn't finish the thought. When Dreyfuss has his breakdown, it's largely self-induced, but it's also induced by Shaw's driving him crazy and making him feel that he's a useless actor. And it plays on his insecurities. And of course, we don't know why he is the way he is, but then suddenly he has this hyperventilation attack.
Yeah.
And in comes Robert Shaw, the villain of the piece in the previous scene, and he calms him down with this incredibly delivered apposite sonnet from Shakespeare, which only Robert Shaw could do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can't imagine Roy Scheider going, when in times of distress, I think on thee, dear friend.
No.
You know, it's
No.
it wouldn't work. But Robert Shaw says it so brilliantly that he calms Dreyfuss down, and in that moment cements the relationship.
Yeah.
Dreyfuss's reaction to it was fascinating because I think it speaks volumes about how good the show is because it obviously pressed buttons, right?
Yeah. I'm thrilled that the play worked so well on so many levels, and it still resonates, and particularly with Jaws fans.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's a smorgasbord for Jaws fans, but it's just a really good, entertaining three-hander about something we all kind of know about, even if we're not Jaws fans.
Yeah.
Or maybe we didn't know we were Jaws fans.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got so much stuff here which people have given me
Yeah.
because I'm obviously a Jaws aficionado now,
Yeah.
apparently. So I've been given so many gifts and Jaws memorabilia, and James has given me loads of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
James has got a nice Lego kit.
I got to show you this guy. I know that when you were in New York, you guys were building this.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, nice.
yeah. You made that?
Yeah, I did.
Is that Lego?
It is. It was a gift.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, who brought you that?
I'll tell you later. So, yeah.
Not cheap.
No. And of course, this is an audio podcast, so nobody can see this.
It's a Lego of the orca and Bruce attacking from the back.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Oh, really? Bruce is sticking into the back, is he?
Yeah.
Well, not in this one, but in the rest of the diorama. Or you can take it off and have it as a separate shark. So that's pretty cool.
How brilliant.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was very lucky to get that.
No, you asked me how special it is to be involved with something linked to Jaws. And it's definitely an honour. It feels like an honour to have been on this project. I'm so thankful that Ian called me and asked me to sort of steer the ship for him.
Yeah.
Totally.
And here we are.
Hey, Guy, your plans looking forward after the struggle of the COVID era and the economic uncertainty? I've noticed that theatrical live-action experiences, you've got Harry Potter, The Cursed Child, you've got Spirited Away,
Yeah.
you've even got theme park stuff like Universal's Monsterverse, and it seems like audiences are really responding to live-action theatrical experiences. And with my little favourite bee in the bonnet, they're kind of sick of AI and digital weary. How are you facing these challenges, and how do you see yourself going forward with your career?
God, that's a really difficult question. Well, as you know,
Yeah.
I have always wanted to be in movies.
Yeah.
And being in theatre really wasn't my goal. And there I am on the 54th floor of this beautiful apartment block in New York, and my lovely daughter, Luli, says to me, "Papa, this must feel like a dream come true." And I said, "It's never been a dream. It never entered my head that I'd be here." Even to play on Broadway as an actor, I wanted to act in movies. That was always my dream. And it never happened. I did do a couple of movies and small parts early in my career, but I had to survive.
Yeah.
And one thing leads to another, and you realize that you're creating work to survive. And my work happened to be created in the theatrical genre. And I then specialized in solo performance because I had a control over it.
Right.
I wasn't beholden to other actors.
Yeah.
And I picked well. I picked 2, 3, or even 4 classic British texts. I started with Under Milk Wood, Animal Farm, Christmas Carol, Shylock. So these things brought an audience, and I had a relatively interesting way of performing, and it created a career for me.
Yeah.
And then that opened other horizons. Part of that was working with people like Ian and directing. And I love directing. I absolutely love directing. I mean, I could say that if all I had to do again for the rest of my life was direct, I would do that, but I would love to direct movies.
Well, you have a knack for it.
Yeah, I think I do have a bit of a knack for it. You know, I heard Cameron McIntosh say once, when he was asked, what makes you so successful? And he said, I think what it is that the audience tends to like what I like. So therefore, I only do things that I like.
Right.
And I don't let anything happen in the shows that I produce that I don't like. So that kind of implies that he'll say to the directors, that's not working for me. Can you make it work for me? And I'll be happy.
Sure.
Which I'm sure most producers do. And I'm sure that even if you're Trevor Nunn or Sam Mendes, you're going to listen to your producer because they're paying your bills.
Yeah.
So I like that mantra. I now believe that if it works for me, it's going to work for an audience. And I do. I listen to everybody in my team. I listen to stage management. I listen to the writers, everybody. That's largely how I work in the rehearsal room.
Right.
You know,
Right.
an actor brings an idea and we develop it. And I go, oh, that's thrown that up. Why don't we take it one step further?
Yeah.
And so eventually the layering happens. I'm certainly not a director with a preconceived idea of what it's going to look like. And sometimes that makes you look rudderless, idealist, and that puts a lot of actors and a lot of people on edge. They want to know that you're the fearless leader with an idea and they're going to be safe in your hands.
Right.
But I say, you're as creative as I am. All I'm going to do is shape what you're going to give me. So give me everything you can.
Right.
But ultimately, the moment, whatever moment, and a play is just a sequence of moments all layered on top of each other,
Yeah.
has to work for me. And actually, that hierarchy in British theatre, particularly at the high end, is adhered to strictly. The director's opinion is final.
Right. Yeah.
And the producers will say their thing, and ultimately, if it doesn't work for the director, then it's not going to happen. That just kind of contradicts what I told you about Cameron Mackintosh.
Right.
But there is definitely a way to find the right way through that satisfies everybody.
Yeah.
And I found that with the team like the one I had on Shark, they were so unbelievably respectful, so brilliantly talented in their own way. They were always continuously coming up with ideas, but more to the point, continuously looking for ways to make your ideas or to realize your ideas. And that's how it works. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
So getting back to how I see my career go, as you know, I've written this screenplay about Uncle Richard.
Yes.
About the road trip.
Yeah.
That's in pre-production. It's been in pre-production for God knows how long. And it's a little frustrating, but it is going to be made. I know it will be made. And I'm absolutely certain that if we get it right, it could make my dreams come true in the film industry.
Now, are you looking at that from a directorial point of view? Because that's obviously a different set of rules than theatrical. Can be crossed, obviously.
Well, I've been told that it's unlikely that I'll be allowed to direct the film because I've never directed a movie.
No.
But obviously, it's my story.
Yeah.
Right.
And the producers know that I'm a director myself.
Yeah.
And so the director we bring on board is going to want to tap into that. And as long as the person who plays me at 19 is devastatingly good looking,
Absolutely.
then I'm okay. No, as long as I feel that I've got some control over the material because it's my story.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's also Uncle Richard's story. And my mission is to protect his reputation
Yeah.
and make sure that he's remembered for the right reasons, not the wrong ones. And the screenplay can go into that. So I truly believe that if we get this right, it could be an Oscar winner for the guy playing Richard. It's that much potential in it. Yeah.
When I think of that, it's a challenge, I would say, because, Uncle Rich, or mega star that he was, but nonetheless, you ask anybody today, the youth, it'd be hard to even know who Betty Davis was,
But they'd remember Elizabeth Taylor.
That's true.
Right,
They do remember her.
right, okay.
Yeah. Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
Charlie Chaplin.
That's true.
There's a handful.
Yeah.
Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
Buster Keaton, you'll still get those names bandied around. They may not know who they are, but Elizabeth Taylor certainly.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
But again, going back to what a good storyline is, okay, it may be about Richard Burton, it may be about a time in his life, but it's actually much more than that. It's about what it's like to become public property
Yes.
Right.
and have no more privacy,
That is fascinating.
and how you deal with that,
Yeah.
and how people like Brad Pitt deal with that, George Clooney. How do you manage your life? And obviously Richard was a template for that, because he didn't have any privacy from 1960 onwards.
Right.
Not even that, 1955.
Yeah.
And then he entered the stratosphere when he met Elizabeth in 1962. And he never fully recovered from that,
Not to go into it too much, don't want to do spoilers, even though I love doing that, but you literally had a front seat view to that experience in this project. I think that's fascinating to see it, experience it.
Well, I did. I mean, I had 5 weeks with him.
Yeah.
Some of which, I would say probably 70% of it was exclusively in his company.
Right.
And, what do you talk about?
Yeah.
After that, what are you going to talk about for 8 hours in a car?
Yeah.
You're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And it wouldn't have worked if Uncle Richard hadn't had a hankering to unload and feel safe.
Right.
Yeah.
And he felt safe with this 19-year-old shared family. Obviously, we had some shared experiences, Welsh rugby, and a sense of humour.
Yes.
And he was naughty. He was wicked.
Yes.
And the romantic side of the story, of course, he was trying to play Cupid for me with the girl that I was in love with.
Which is excellent.
So, if you're going to take love advice, who are you going to take it from? Richard Burton? I don't think so.
Yeah. Marital bliss not.
So there's a lot to it, and maybe that will assuage my ambition. And who knows? I've always been one to jump on an opportunity if it comes my way, and hopefully I can add value to it. And I'd love the phone to ring. People can call me and offer me jobs. That's fine. Please do it. It rarely happens because people just assume I'm busy all the time.
Right.
Which I kind of am, but just ask.
Okay, so just for our listeners out there, you're not busy.
Yeah.
You're open to work.
Ask.
Call now, 555.
Actually, Guy, we make little videos. Perhaps you'd be so kind as to appear.
I'd love to. Oh, no, I'd love to do that. Listen, people want to offer me that kind of work. I love it.
It's unpaid.
Of course.
You guys are very talented at what you do. And
Keep talking.
it's criminal when talented people don't get breaks. But the only thing I can say is that you just got to believe. I think when you have a family as you do, that does focus the mind.
Yeah.
It also stops you doing things that you really should do.
Right.
It stops you taking risks that perhaps you should take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say that life is what happens to you when you're busy planning for it.
Right.
I've lived my life on a risk basis.
Yeah.
And I've got away with it somehow. It's not always been easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that off the podcast.
Oh, sure, she's giving advice. Guy charges money for this, James. We're getting advice here.
The only advice, I read a book once,
Once.
green it was. No, I read a book
And never again.
called Think and Grow Rich.
Yes,
I read a book
Yeah, me too.
by Napoleon Hill. And I swear to God, it changed my life.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for him to give me the answer.
What's that?
Exactly.
He gives you the answer, James. It's passion. It's passion.
It's passion, it's persistence.
He could have done that in the opening part of the book, couldn't he? Just cut to the chase.
It's passion, it's faith in yourself, and it's persistence. Of course, it's wrapped in 1930s narrative, and
Yeah.
there were a lot more opportunities around that time. But there's also a lot of religion in it, which you can change the metaphors if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
And it does talk about the goal being money, which I also don't agree with. The goal shouldn't be money.
No.
The goal should be do what you love, do it with passion, believe in what you do, and the money will come.
Yeah.
And it generally does.
It does.
Because you're going to maximize your abilities as you go.
I'm rubbing my chin beard off here because I hear that and it's like, you know, I'm in my 50s. Shocking, I know. But I've been in the business for 35 years and then suddenly it's like you're off a cliff.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is hard to kind of, okay, how do I flip? How does one pivot? That's the word these days. You got to pivot.
Well, you do have to pivot. And this friends of ours came to dinner on Friday, and this guy's heavily into AI and he consults about AI. And on his phone, he's got a number of apps like ChatGPT, like Grok or whatever it's called, this, that, and the other, all of them, and various others. And I said, so you know so many ways. He said, I don't teach people how to use the apps. I teach people what app to use to get to the basis of their problem, how to utilize AI to help you solve the issues, because not every AI machine is going to give you the answers you think you want. Anyway,
No.
so he tried it on me. We did a quick test and he says, who is Guy Masterson?
Right.
And up came this thing. Guy Masterson is the director, well known for the solid performances, director of the Broadway hit The Shark is Broken, blah, 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 blah. So there was enough to go on. And because my biography is online, there's a Wikipedia page and everything, it can source all of that stuff. So the next question was, how would Guy Masterson develop the next 5 years of his career? And what would be ways to improve his income and outlook over the next 5 years?
Right.
Based on what the internet tells you.
Yeah.
And out came this 50-page report,
Yeah.
all broken down into stages and ideas and career moves,
Yeah.
many of which I'm already doing, many of which I look at it and go, no, I did that 20 years ago, I'm not going to go there again.
Right.
And other ones going, oh my God, of course I could do that. If worst comes to the worst, I could do that. But I've always followed my dreams.
It's quite fascinating in concurrence with what you're saying. There's this report, and what if one were to do that? And the same with James. It's not about me here, although I'd love it to be. And using technology. Now, the thing I would say is I even have used AI a little bit when I've done jobs, but instead of using it to provide the final image, which is a bit of a cheat because it has scraped, I do use it as a base to maybe explore. And then I render over the top, or I take ideas and so on and so forth. So I think it definitely has its place. It's not going anywhere.
AI is absolutely ripping into everything we do, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So, Guy, I wanted to ask you,
That's enough.
just to wrap it up, tell us about where The Shark is Broken is playing in Martha's Vineyard, what the opening dates are there previews, etc.
It's playing at the Martha's Vineyard Performing Arts Centre on Edgartown Road. It opens on the 5th of July. It's scheduled to go to the 27th of July.
Okay.
And I think it's 7 performances a week. And get your tickets fast. This thing is going to rock.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you're leaving to go there for setup and rehearsals and all that kind of stuff this week, right?
Yeah, Wednesday morning we fly into Boston and we go to Martha's Vineyard on Thursday. And we can't wait.
Fantastic. Have you got tickets to the museums?
I'm in an event in the museum.
He's there, mate.
Are you in the shark's mouth in the parade?
No, I think we are part of the parade. I'm doing a talk event about the making of The Shark is Broken in the museum.
Okay.
Oh.
And Brigitte is going to be taking her camera, obviously, and shooting everything she can.
Right.
And she's had a really interesting idea, but I'll tell you about it when she gets back.
All right.
Brigitte being your better half.
Yes, much better half, and the more beautiful half.
I was going to say, she's much better looking.
Yes, she really, really is. She's quite stunning. But she's also a brilliant photographer,
Right.
Yeah, no, totally.
and she's going to use those skills.
Fantastic.
Oh, sorry, just to interrupt. Why am I sorry? You see, it's being English. I'm apologising for everything.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
But, Guy, is Mr. Spielberg going to make an appearance, do you think?
I don't know. I think, I really don't know.
Oh, okay.
We heard that a number of big people were going to be there. Nothing's been confirmed as far as I know.
Right.
There is someone from the film going to be with me at the library.
Okay.
That can be looked up on the web, actually.
Oh, and there's Joe Alves, isn't there, the production designer?
Joe Alves is there, yeah.
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 There's all kinds of Jaws-related stuff. We're the only proper live event, I think, apart from talks and
Right.
chats and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Someone's built a full life-size orca.
Oh,
Fantastic.
nice.
Then I go into rehearsal, and we open on the 5th.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Yes, for about 4 days from Thursday onwards, it's going to be Jaws, Jaws, Jaws.
Awesome.
Break legs.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Guy.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Before we go, we bring you our
Fact check! Fact check! Fact check!
Fact check segment.
here with the benefit of hindsight.
And editing.
We can own up to our mistakes.
James.
Yes.
So why is Martha's Vineyard named Martha's Vineyard?
Well, I'm glad you asked. In 1602, an Englishman named Bartholomew Gosnold arrived on the island.
You did hear, yes.
He called it Martha's Vineyard, likely to honour his daughter, and because he found wild grapes on the island.
Oh, I've got some wild grapes. But did you know the arrival of the European settlers on Martha's Vineyard proved catastrophic for the indigenous Wampanoag population? Most of the island's 3,000 strong indigenous population was wiped out by the European diseases for which they had no immunity.
That's some bad hat, Harry.
So there we go.
Right.
Right, well, cracking job. Cheers, James.
Thanks, mate.
Nice one, Guy.
Cheers.
Cheers.